And in the end, the Houthis rejected the proposal, as if 7 years of war is not enough for them. The Yemeni government is positive in the approach toward peace, but its inability to lead from inside Yemen weakened its position. Also, during the last few months, the new US administration stepped up its commitment to Yemen by appointing Ambassador Linder King as a special envoy, and recently the UN announced a new special envoy of the Secretary General, Mr. Grunberg. This panel discussion, which is distinguished participant, Ambassador Firestein, former US Ambassador to Yemen, Mr. Rafat Al-Akhali, former government minister and well-known economic expert, and Rashad Jarhoum, a prominent leader of the Women Peace Track, will address alternatives for peace from the political, humanitarian, and gender perspective. This discussion comes days before the world leaders gather in the United Nations to urge them not to forget Yemen and its people. The panelists will address more practical approaches to end the war and trust-building measures needed among the parties to the conflict to lessen the impact of the war on the impoverished population of Yemen. The conflict in Yemen is turning fierce. News of renewed and significant Houthi offensive over Marib is in the center of focus in the intelligence report in the region. The smuggling routes from Al-Mahra, Aden, and Hudaydah are active, providing the logistics capabilities the Houthis need to continue the carnage. The Taliban takeover of Afghanistan provide the confirmation to the Houthis in their belief in force as a mean to achieve their goals. Here, the Houthis have a false perception, in my opinion. They still have the choice to continue warring, but their action, like the Taliban, will never get them international recognition. The Houthi movement only can consolidate itself and gain recognition through peace and national reconciliation by accepting to stop the war and working with others, especially the government of Yemen, to recover the statehood and rebuild the country. 10 years of political crisis and 7 years of war have transformed the Yemeni scene into the worst humanitarian crisis in the post-Second World War era. More than 2/3 of the Yemeni population, almost 21 million, needing humanitarian assistance and protection. The coronavirus and flooding are causing devastation all around the Yemeni geography. The battlegrounds in Yemen are devouring the entire young generation, keeping their future in doubt. 30,000 fresh recruits feed the battlefields annually. Child soldiers are everywhere. Women are the most impacted after their husbands, fathers, and sons are dead, maimed, or detained. For in my opinion, if women are not empowered to lead the Yemeni society search for peace, I have doubts of the seriousness of any attempt to establish durable peace in Yemen. Finally, this call focuses on breaking the cycle of violence in Yemen and an open appeal to the Houthi to join the UN, the Yemeni, the regional, and the international peace efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Al-Yemeni, for those insights. Your remarks, I think in the third or fourth paragraph, you bring up an interesting question that I want to pose to each of our panelists as a warm-up question. We've been following the news from Afghanistan recently, and I want to ask the question, are there any parallels or lessons learned that are useful for the Yemen context? How about we start with you, Ambassador Firestein, please.
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think that there will be an inclination to compare the Taliban to the Houthis. I would say that I would disagree with the suggestion that it is a parallel situation. There's a fundamental difference between the conflict in Afghanistan and the conflict in Yemen, in the sense that Yemen is a civil war. It is not a war being fought with outside forces, and the Taliban were able, over the course of the last 20 years, to present themselves as the defenders of the Afghan nation against a foreign force, the U.S. and our partners in the conflict. That obviously doesn't apply for the situation in Yemen. While the Houthis have tried to present to the international community and to others this idea that this is a conflict between Yemen and Saudi Arabia, and that the Saudis are a foreign aggressive force inside of Yemen. I think that Yemenis know much better than that, that these are Yemenis who are fighting amongst themselves, and that this is an effort on the part of the Houthis to overthrow a legitimate government in Sana'a and take power for themselves. So I would say that the parallels between the two issues are simply not there.
Thank you. Do you have something to add, Ms. Rasha?
Thank you so much, Hussam, and I second that what the ambassador said, but for me, when I see what happened in Afghanistan, it just reflects a lesson learned that basically no one was listening to the women. The women always warned about the radicalization that is happening among youth. They always warned about the arms transfers and flow. They warned about the corruption that happens. And this is exactly what we are doing in Yemen as women groups. We've been asking that countering terrorism and preventing violent extremism and countering that should not only be done with arms and violent countering. It should have a soft component in terms of education, de-radicalization, in terms of fighting corruption within the state, in terms of ensuring that service delivery reaches all areas. We see this, unfortunately, there is states that only counter terrorism through military action, which is needed, but not for protracted crises. For protracted crisis, we need something with a soft approach that really change the situation. The other thing is that we reach a level of we don't have any social trust towards the international community anymore. And for me, the UN countries that are sponsoring the peace process will need to really prove their intentions towards realizing peace in Yemen. This is for me personally. I will need to reach a level because in the last 10 years, we haven't seen any success story in terms of peace. All the peace that is being achieved internationally, it's very fragile. There is always tension. Even the one in Colombia, we can see already there is, it's not stable. So how can we reach a level where multi-party peace process is designed to include, that amplifies the local voices and ensures that there is sustainability to the peace process? And I will stop my answer here to give room to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rasha. Rafat, do you have something to add, Mr. Rafat?
Sure. I think in terms of parallels, the ambassador mentioned that there may be on the definition of what the conflict is, there might be differences in the conflict, of course, between Afghanistan and Yemen and other places. But I think there are as well many parallels between the two situations, if not at the definition of what the conflict is. Most importantly, I think what we saw very clearly is what we are seeing as well in Yemen, is that this notion of international legitimacy or legitimacy given by the international community does not hold for long. Regimes that are propped up by this international legitimacy while facing very significant challenges to either their effectiveness or their integrity on the ground or their ability to deliver either on the military side, security side, on any side, will quickly fall apart as soon as that international support is lifted. And I think this has a very close parallel to what we have in Yemen, and especially when you see on the ground, I just came back from Yemen, as we were discussing earlier, and you feel very heavily that absence of the quote unquote legitimate government at the central level. Of course, at the local level, you have the local authorities, and that's a different discussion. And there are very significant differences between each governorate and the other. But you really sense that gap and that void, and that same story of huge corruption, inability to run the military properly, lack of trust between the different factions that form the government. And I think, to me, that's the most striking resemblance between the two situations.
Thank you. Do you have something to add, Ambassador Yemeni, or should we move?
No, really. I agree with all the panelists that there is similarities, that there is differences. Similarities, and I mentioned that it's on the impression given to the Houthis that they can continue warring and they can get victorious through the use of force. We always say that there is no military solution to the conflict in Yemen. And they need to understand that to sit down with others and negotiate the future of Yemen and return the integrity of the country, this is very important for them. And they have the choice. They have the choice, and the international community should apply more pressure on them in that direction. Thank you.
Thank you all. You all have raised some great points. I would like to come back to Russia. For over 16 years, Ms. Russia, you have an impressive record of leadership, experience mobilizing women peace builders and leaders in Yemen. And also you have advocated for meaningful participation of women in the peace process, as you just mentioned, and have been open about your frustration with how slow the UN and the Yemeni government have been to respond to this need. My question is, what are the barriers that you see to increasing Yemen women participation in the solution of the conflict? And also, what are your expectations of the new special envoy with regard to the structure of peace talks? Thank you.
Thank you, Hussam. I think in Yemen we had a great model of inclusion for women during the national dialogue. And then in the current peace process, the entire design has been disappointing since the beginning. It has been limited only to 2 parties. It's a very traditional backward design, I would describe it, and it's driven by patriarchy. All the reasons we've been hearing, whether it is from the parties or from the UN, sometimes some staff, and also from international diplomats. For example, we heard a reason that women are not qualified, they are not ready, they are not holding the guns. All of these reasons are, the source is basically patriarchy. The Yemeni women, and specifically in Peace Track Initiative, we work with a lot of women leaders on the ground who risk their lives on a daily basis. I've been questioned very recently whether women are able to participate in the ceasefire phase, and that it is better for them for their participation to be delayed and postponed till the when we are in a transitional period and a political dialogue is commences. But my response to this kind of notion is that this is not correct. Yemeni women need to be included in all phases. We have currently Yemeni women in the front lines and the trying to force a ceasefire, or trying to go to families who are trapped in crossfire to get them food or to evacuate them safely. We have women who were successfully negotiated a temporary ceasefire to send buses to evacuate families from locations in areas that are under fire. So women are already in the ground, and they are in the front lines already. They are victims, and also they are leading efforts to relieve their communities. So we cannot exclude them from any phase. They need to be included in all the phases. And as Yemeni women peace leaders, we've came together and we've worked on a feminist peace roadmap, which is a guiding framework, I would say, to the parties and also to the mediators, that includes all the phases, what we want in the ceasefire phase, what we want in the political negotiations phase, and what we want in a transitional phase. And this roadmap is still being developed, and people are still sending us feedback on it, and it's going to have a second version by end of this year, and hopefully be shared and be helpful for the mediator. Now, for the new envoy, my advice is that he needs to design meaningful consultations and discussions. So the process needs to be inclusive in terms of all the parties that has been excluded, whether at the local community, local leaders, tribe leaders, and the factions in terms of armed groups that exist who were not included, and the political parties who are not included, and also the community and the civil society leaders. They need to be included in any discussion that goes forward with the parties. Limiting it to the design of two parties is not going to work. We need parallel processes that put the human rights approach or the human rights principles at the center of the negotiation process, and try to resolve the violations, the human rights violations that happened, especially that targeted women, including sexual and gender-based violence. So my advice for him would be that he needs to really allocate enough time to have meaningful discussion with civil society, and not courtesy meetings, 10-minute meeting, or that you are giving 1 minute to speak, and then the rest is not like there is not meaningful discussion to what needs to be reflected in the peace process. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ambassador Firestein, you were the U.S. ambassador to Yemen during the period of 2010 to 2013, and you played a key role at the State Department shaping the U.S. response to events in Yemen and across the region after the in the aftermath of the Arab Spring. And you closely observe events right now in the region from your current position in the Middle East Institute. My question is this: what are the main shifts that we have seen in US policy towards negotiations since the Biden administration decided to prioritize Yemen in its foreign policy?
Thanks, Hussam. And I think that what we've seen is a pretty major shift in the U.S. direction, which unfortunately has not worked out, I think, in the way that the administration hoped. I mean, we went from a period, if you recall back, the conflict began in late 2014. The Saudi intervention in 2015. In 2016, the still Obama administration, particularly Secretary Kerry, was taking a very active role in trying to facilitate a political resolution of the conflict. He traveled to Oman, met with the Houthis there. He also met in Saudi Arabia with the Saudi leadership and with the government of Yemen leadership to try to push forward in support of the UN process at the time. That did not prosper. The initiative that he took was not welcomed. But then you had the 4 years of the Trump administration in which they really, although they continued to support, and we shouldn't lose sight, they continued to support a political resolution of the conflict. The fact of the matter is that they didn't play an active role in supporting the UN initiatives. They more or less left to Saudi Arabia and the UAE determining what the political process should look like, and accepted the leadership of our regional partners in defining what U.S. policy would be. In the campaign trail last year, now President Biden was very clear in saying that he would go back to the effort that was underway at the end of Obama administration, that he would appoint and did appoint, of course, in February, a U.S. special envoy to support the UN. He also made it clear that the United States was going to put its full weight behind a diplomatic push to bring in the international community, and also to press the government of Saudi Arabia to hold back on the military intervention in order to help promote a political resolution. I think that there was a hope and an expectation on the part of the Biden administration at that time that by putting its full weight behind a diplomatic process, that the parties would very quickly come back to the table, and that we would see the beginning of a negotiated resolution, looking at particularly the joint declaration that Martin Griffiths had been working on for over a year, ceasefire, reopening the airport in Sana'a, dropping the blockade at the port in Hodeidah, taking several other measures that would help improve the atmosphere for a resolution. But unfortunately, as we've seen over these past 6 or 7 months, the new U.S. Initiative on diplomacy has not really prospered. In fact, the Houthis, for reasons that are not terribly clear, whether it was because they saw the Biden approach as a sign of weakness, whether in fact they're being encouraged by Tehran to link progress in Yemen to the state of negotiations in Vienna over the Iranian nuclear file, or whether there are other factors. The Houthis have so far resisted rejoining the political process, and in fact have taken a very aggressive position towards the new UN Special Envoy Hans Grunberg, and so we're in an unclear moment right now about how this process is going to go forward, and what the circumstances might be that would encourage the Houthis to return to the negotiations. And at this point, I want to also agree with the points that Russia has made, and I wrote, along with my colleague Fatima Abu al-Asrar, an article that just appeared several weeks ago in a U.S. publication that basically said exactly what Russia has said, that we have an opportunity at this moment with a new UN Special Envoy coming into office to expand the scope of the dialogue and to move beyond the binary structure that we've had really since the beginning of the conflict, looking really only at the Houthis and the government of Yemen, and to really bring in other voices, other women's voices, civil society, youth, others who really need to be a part of the political resolution and who bring fresh thinking and new initiatives to the table that might be very helpful in providing a framework for a broader political conclusion to the conflict.
Thank you, Ambassador. But you brought up a point of maybe the Houthis are seeing a weakness in the new administration approach. Do you link that to the kind of like the presidential envoy, Tim King, and which you may someone see that it's a signal of a higher level of policy engagement? But at the same time, do you think that confusion or that a lot of presence with the U.S. ambassador and a special envoy, can you tell us about that kind of situation in Yemen and how does that work? Does it hinder the job or does it reinforce it or make it easier or smoother?
Well, I think, you know, it's not a particularly unusual situation for the U.S. We have a number of other situations where you have a special envoy who's looking at one particular aspect of a problem, and then you have an embassy that is managing the day-to-day affairs of U.S. engagement. And I think that that's the situation that we have here, where Tim King's mandate is to basically help facilitate, support the UN Special Envoy and the negotiations aimed at ending the conflict. You now also have, of course, a chargé d'affaires in Riyadh and her team that are managing U.S.-Yemeni relations on a broader basis and looking after really the day-to-day affairs in the bilateral relationship. Of course, it's somewhat complicated by the fact that we don't have a diplomatic presence in Sana'a itself. And one would hope that if there is progress in a political resolution, that we would be able, as part of that, to reopen our embassy in Sana'a so that we can be on the ground and be more supportive of the Yemeni people. But I would also say, just to clarify my comments, it wasn't only the decision to emphasize diplomacy that might have provided the wrong signal to the Houthis, the wrong, that they may have misinterpreted what the U.S. position was. It was also the pressure that the U.S. Said it would put on Saudi Arabia in order to reduce Saudi military operations inside of Yemen, that might have given the Houthis the sense that without that Saudi support, the government forces would not be able to defend against a new Houthi offensive, particularly in Marib.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate it. And also I want to I wanted to thank you for your observations and on the structure of negotiations. So this is a key point that experts seem to be coming to consensus on, like speaking to initiatives. Mr. Rafat, you have done like important work on the economic aspects of the peace talks, and also on humanitarian crisis in Yemen. There was an interesting piece on Al Jazeera recently that spoke to the central bank of Yemen as the last front in the war, and financial governance issues as key to any sustainable peace deal in Yemen. We know that as part of the peace process, for example, in Stockholm, Sweden, ideas were put forward related to creating a joint fund to pay government salaries as a confidence building exercise between both sides. My question is next, like, what would be required to make such proposals successful, and what can be done to revive Yemen's economic institutions?
Absolutely, Hussam. I think I've always been saying that the economic front is the most impacting on the people of Yemen. We all know, a bullet kills one person, a missile kills tens of people, but really the economic collapse, the collapse of the currency, the skyrocketing prices is killing hundreds of thousands of people literally out of starvation, and millions are being pushed to the brink. So this is an issue that all parties should have an interest in addressing. All parties should have an interest, regardless of the position of the conflict itself, in actually working together towards, because it's impacting not only the people, but even the parties. It's placing significant pressure on the government side, on Ansar Allah side, from the population in the areas that they control. So I think we have constantly been saying that this is a critical front. And as we see as well, the trajectory of the conflict, increasingly, there are a few military fronts that are still active, most notably now in Marib this year. But outside those limited military fronts, the real conflict has turned into the economic front. And you see it all across, you see it on the fuel issues, you see it on the currency issues, you see it on telecom issues now, increasingly. You see it on the central bank, as you mentioned, you see it on issues of customs and taxes and revenues from all that. So both parties, I would say, are turning into these tools to try and achieve their objectives. Now, the biggest challenge that we have faced so far is that there has been a lack of international leadership in facilitating this process. Unfortunately, the UN so far, the Special Envoy's office specifically, have not seen this as their mandate. The former envoy, Martin Griffiths, has repeatedly, whether correctly or not, but this was his position, that his mandate is not to address this economic issue. His mandate is to end the war by reaching a ceasefire and some sort of a power sharing agreement. And so despite cycles of escalation on the economic front, there has never been an actual process to address this. There has never been actual leadership on the international side. We've seen blips of interest, especially when there is a major crisis, either from the Quad, what's called the Quad, US, UK, Saudi, and UAE, who have taken it upon themselves, or kind of self-nominated themselves as the chaperones of this economic file in some cases. But the challenge is, what is needed is really an honest broker to mediate this, and that's why either the Special Envoy or others leading this would have been more appropriate, I would say. But regardless of that, what we have seen is this void and gap. The Special Envoy repeatedly refusing to take leadership on that. The issue being perhaps pushed into the back of the file. I remember as well when the new US envoy, Tim Linderkin, took over, I think this remains until now one of his priorities. But of course, it seemed that him and his team came in with a high ambition that they will be able to reach a quick ceasefire. And so these economic issues were relegated to, let's first get the ceasefire, let's get these 4 points, and then absolutely this is important, we'll look at it later. Of course, that didn't happen, the ceasefire, and will probably not happen anytime soon. Now, back to where we stand now, the big question that everyone is waiting for the answer is where the new envoy Hans Grunberg will stand on this. As already mentioned before, what everyone agrees on is the simplistic peace process that tries to boil down the issues to the bare minimum and the parties to the bare minimum, with an attempt or a theory that this will be a faster way to get resolution, has proven perhaps not so effective after over 6 years of the conflict. We have not been able to reach a quick solution by minimizing the number of parties and the number of issues, and by creating a peace process that does not reflect the complexity of the situation on the ground in Yemen. And so the big question is, will we see a new approach to the peace process that is more a multi-track approach that actually can address the different issues, the economic issues being at the top of the list? We are probably going to see another round of escalation, and we've seen already over the past month initial signs of that. There was a round of escalation back in December, and now there has been statements back and forth, and we will likely see a big escalation on the banking sector very soon. And when that happens, everyone will scramble to try and resolve it. The most frustrating thing I would say is that there is so much, at least rhetoric attention paid to the humanitarian crisis, and yet very little done to try and address the key parts that are causing the humanitarian crisis, which are economic in nature. Sending food baskets is the easy way and the quick way to address the symptoms, but there is much more that can be done. And there was a good statistic that showed, how the small increase at some point in the currency in Yemen wiped out all the work that the World Bank and all the funding that they provided over the 2 years, because just with that, it was at that point, I think 10% currency deterioration. Now we're talking about 400% since the beginning of the conflict. So I think this remains to be the key issue, and we remain to need this clear leadership, clear process, clear agenda, actual sustained effort to bring the parties together on these economic issues, coordination issues of central bank, fiscal policy, monetary policy, but we have not seen it so far, unfortunately.
Thank you very much, Rafat. Ambassador Yemeni, I'm sure you have some views on this, and I want to ask you, what is your opinion on how the structure of the negotiations, both the parties and the issues on the table, and how these should evolve to be more effective processes?
Actually, before answering to your question, I want just to add to what Minister Rafat just mentioned. It's really critical because the special envoy, within the mandate of the special envoy, the note that Secretary General sent to the Security Council, there is no mentioning of the economic humanitarian, because this is really conflicting issue within the UN system. That's why you see them thinking that resolving the political issue is totally a separated and isolated issue from the economic. And the sufferness in Yemen today is not in the war zone, it's everywhere. People, I don't know why. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm out totally. Yes. Okay. So this is the issue that when the currency is devaluated, when people cannot get a piece of bread, this add to. I'm telling you, the 21 million in need of protection and humanitarian assistance is a huge number. And as you mentioned, and we mentioned the discussion, the humanitarian, the donor fatigue, no one will be giving you today. Afghanistan is asking also humanitarian assistance. Other countries in the world, it's about to work out among the parties to the conflict issues related to how to lessen the impact on the economic and humanitarian side on the population, because this is the situation that is unbearable, really. And On the issue of the negotiation, I hear all this stuff. I saw the statements, the piece written by Ambassador Feinstein, and also the crisis group was addressing this issue. And I think it will lead nowhere. And everyone worked with me during my ministerial time will realize that opening the Pandora box will cause more delays and more lack of focus on the main issue of stopping the war. We need to stop the war. We need to break the cycle of violence. Then everything will be okay. What I think that the representation of Ansar Allah or the de facto authorities in Sana'a and the legitimate government, they are not reflecting really the realities on the ground. And every time you need to have in the delegation of the government, you need to have a good representation of the woman. You need to have all the components, the new realities reflected on the ground. You need to see STC represented. You need to see the guards of the republic represented. You need to see everyone represented in that delegation, because this is the future that is of interest to everyone. But the way that they design the delegations to negotiate, it's always an old-fashioned of you need to control and rule, and this is not effective anymore. And if I mentioned that everywhere. If we don't see a leading position of women in the search for peace in Yemen, it's hopeless, I'm telling you.
Just as a follow-up on that, Ambassador, like you talked about the international community, but I want to ask you about the role of the internationally recognized government of Yemen, and especially its leader, President Hadi himself, who remains based in Saudi Arabia, where he has been over the past 60 years in exile. My question is, how can he truly govern Yemen and be a credible interlocutor in peace negotiations from this position in like being away from his home country that he is presiding?
From my days in office, I was repeating the same idea. And I mentioned that in my statement. The inability of the government to lead on the ground is really impacting and really impacting on the quality of the government, impacting on the delivery of his political agenda, and impacting on it's weakening the government in every position. And Rafat just mentioned, when you go to the ground, you see the local levels, you see the level of corruption, you see the government absent, totally absent from anywhere. So you realize that it's Yemen is turning into fiefdoms, into chunks of pieces of lands, these land controlled by these guys, and you just cross the checkpoints, and there is the Salafis, and you cross the checkpoints, and there is the Parak forces in the west coast. You come to Aden, you see another kingdom totally doing, and everyone. It's very important what Rafat mentioned. Everyone is trying to grab the utmost of resources to run its own machinery. The STC has its own system. Parak has its own system. Salafis and Ta'is forces. Everywhere you go, you see everyone is trying to get its own resources and to push harder on the population. And it's really very, very painful when you see the life of the regular Yemeni and how they get their piece of bread at the end of the day.
I want to go back when we are talking about peace and government and local. I want to go back to Ambassador Feinstein. Like we have heard the U.S. Special Envoy, like Linder King, say that the Houthis should be part of the political solution. And now we're hearing from our panelists, we hear that the negotiations should be more inclusive. which makes sense. Also because since the Houthis are the de facto government in Sana'a and they control like 60% of the land in Yemen. Yet, to our knowledge, that the US does not have direct contact with them. How does this affect the US ability to influence negotiations that lead to an actual and a viable peace deal?
Well, of course, the U.S. does have contact with the Houthis, and has over many years. Even when I was still in Sana'a in 2011, 2012, we did meet with the Houthis from time to time. My successor, Matt Tuller, dealt with the Houthis extensively during the Kuwait negotiations. Secretary Kerry met with the Houthis in Oman. Tim Lenderking has met with the Houthis in Oman as part of his consultations with the parties to the conflict. So we do talk to the Houthis. I don't think that the Houthis have any problem understanding what the U.S. Position is on these issues. We've said, along with everybody else, that including the Saudi Arabia, by the way, that we have no objection to the Houthis participating in a future government of Yemen as a political party. And I think that this is clearly the distinction that we need to draw here. If the Houthis have some idea that they should be in Yemen occupying a position like Hezbollah, for example, in Lebanon, where they would be a state within a state, where they would have the ability to maintain their own military capability, where they would have a veto power over what happened in Sana'a. I think that this would be problematic. But if they are willing to come into participation with the rest of Yemen as part of a political environment, then they would be welcome. And I would go back to the negotiations in 2011, 2012. The Houthis certainly had an opportunity to join in. They did participate, as you'll recall, in the National Dialogue Conference. They were there. There was a demand by all of the political parties, not just the Houthis, but by all of the political parties when we were working on what became the GCC initiative, that one of the major elements of the negotiations going forward should be, in fact, an effort to address the issues related to the Houthis and Sada and what had happened over the course of the 6 conflicts in the early part of the century. So there's no objection, and I think that the Houthis understand perfectly well that we don't object to their participation, but only in a political context.
Thank you, Ambassador. But maybe now that they're like the Houthis in 2011 and 2012 weren't as strong as they are now. They weren't at the time the de facto. And do you think, you follow it closely, do you think their positions like shifted, or what is actually that is stopping them from be a good partner or like a good negotiator, like sit into the table and be reasonable in a way?
Well, I think part of the problem, and I think that we probably will all bring our own views to the table here. I would say that part of the problem is that the Houthis themselves don't know what it is that they want as an outcome of this conflict. That they are themselves internally divided. There are certainly elements of the Houthi movement that would be perfectly willing to participate in a government the way I have laid it out, that they would favor being part of a political process, that they would favor being, participants in a government that way. But there are other elements that that clearly have a kind of vision of their rightful role in Yemen, who see themselves as successors of the imamate, perhaps, that they are the rightful rulers of Yemen, and even that they might be able to achieve their success through military victory that brings all of Yemen under their control. And there may be other elements that see the future of Yemen as divided, and that perhaps they would be perfectly satisfied to go back to a pre-1990 kind of structure in Yemen, where they would be the rulers of North Yemen, and others, perhaps the Southern Transition Council or others, might be the rulers in the former South Yemen. So I think that part of the problem that we have here is that the Houthis have not been able to negotiate successfully with the other parties to the conflict or with the international community, because they have not been able to successfully negotiate amongst themselves about what it is that they want to achieve in this conflict.
Yes, thank you, Ambassador. I think Rafat has something to add to that.
Yeah, I think it's much more simpler than the what the ambassador said. If I put myself in the Houthis' shoes, it's simple calculation of what they get to gain or lose from engaging in a political process or agreeing to a peace process, or who they engage with that. Right now, it's a very simple equation and formula. Why would I go into a peace process and offer any kind of concessions to a party that is fragmenting day by day, to a party that is falling apart? I am on the offensive, they are on the defensive. They cannot get their act together, they're not on the country. All the reasons that give zero incentives for the Houthis to actually engage in any sort of negotiation, because they don't really stand to gain anything from it. They currently have full control over the areas that they control. Why would they want to share that with anyone else, let alone with someone who's not even there to begin with? And they are on the way to gain more grounds militarily, and the opponent is, as I mentioned, falling apart. The regional international backers are falling apart. I think it's a simple calculation of power and of wins and losses, and it goes right to the natural conclusion that they have nothing to gain by engaging in this. So I don't think it's a matter of them not knowing what they want or not being able to negotiate or anything. They are negotiating on the ground with their military power, and they've got nothing to gain from a political process, only possibly something to lose by allowing others to share what they have. I think this is, of course, can be seen as a more short-termism, as a more opportunistic. Maybe if they actually thought about, a more holistic, way forward for the whole of Yemen, where everyone shares and all that. But on the ground, the facts are very different, and I think that's what the driving factor is. I see the ambassador and Russia as something to comment.
Yes, please, Ambassador Yemeni or Russia, if you want to add something to the.
No, Ambassador Feinstein is and Russia, they're asking, and I will comment maybe. This is the logic.
Why don't we let Russia go, and then I'll follow up.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Ambassador. Thank you. I just want to basically agree with what Rafat said. For the Houthis, for us, for me personally, they are politically immature. I don't think they understand power sharing. They are not there yet. They only know the language of military language and armed and hostilities language, but they haven't reached a level where they understand how to engage politically. This is because of what we see, how they treat their enemies and also how they treat their allies and here specifically the GPC party. So for them to engage in a political process or the peace process, they still need to prove that they have reached a level of maturity. This can be through the confidence building measures, through releasing the detainees, starting with women, because they have a lot of women detainees who are women human rights defenders or political activists. So these small things that they still need to earn the trust of the Yemeni people in order to be part of this process. Now, in terms of compromise or incentives, the only thing that could pressure Houthis to engage in a negotiation process is international pressure through public shaming. When they are on lists that they are perpetrators of the 6 grave violations against children, and specifically child recruitment, when this kind of pressure will push them into negotiations. The other thing is the economic pressure that has been a weapon of the legitimate government for some time, specifically when they have cut the supplies of oil and fuel. This is not working because the Houthis have their ways of getting, what do you call it, the commissions and customs, different ways through the road and everything, but it's economic, it's political, and it is unfortunately military. These are the 3 options if you want them to engage. We don't want the violent options, but public shaming, for me, that would be the recommendation. The other thing that I wanted to add is that for resolving humanitarian and economic issues, this could be actually a second step of a confidence building measure, and to show that the Houthis are ready to be part of a future transitional period. It's basically to form a technocrat committee, and this is something that we proposed in the Feminist Peace Roadmap, a technocrat committee that is responsible for the humanitarian and the economic issues, to just prioritize the civilians' interests bigger than any other interest. So just making sure the service delivery is happening, COVID response is happening. Today, when we look at Facebook, it's full of condolences, because a lot of people are dying in Yemen because of COVID, and there is no response whatsoever, and no recording of such situation, but it is well known that it is due to COVID. Circling back to the issue of the mandate of the UN envoy, this is a problem in Yemen. We have a mandate for the UN envoy in Syria and other countries. For Yemen, the UN envoy does not have a mandate. If you go to the website, you would see 2 lines, something like that. It's not set clearly and endorsed by the UN Security Council. This is actually a gap that needs to be addressed if we want to move forward on this. And the last issue that I wanted to add is basically, as Rafat mentioned as well, is that we need multi-track or parallel processes. So we should not be obsessed about the ceasefire only, just to solve the ceasefire, but it should be parallel to all the issues going in multiple tracks and different levels, whether it is local level or regional level or national level. That needs to be, the peace process needs to be addressed and not be tempted to be oversimplified, whether 2 parties. No, it needs to be deconstructed and taking into context all the levels, the different levels and the different parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Rasha. Ambassador Feinstein?
Yeah, I would just go back. I don't necessarily disagree with Rafat's point, although I would still be inclined to reiterate. I think that part of the problem is internal divisions within the Houthi movement. I don't think that all of the Houthis necessarily believe that they have nothing to gain from a political dialogue. And we saw in 2016 that, in fact, the Houthis were able to participate in Kuwait in a political negotiation, and which which to all intents and purposes was a success. I mean, the parties actually reached an agreement, which was only broken at the very last minute. But I do think it goes back to an important point, and that is that again, where the Biden administration thought early on that putting its hand very firmly down on the diplomatic track in support of the United Nations, that would be sufficient to push the parties back to the negotiating table. It didn't work. And we are 6 months down the road in a somewhat worse position in terms of the military situation on the ground. And so, perhaps it brings us back to the question of whether or not, before we can convince the Houthis that they need to return to the negotiating table, there needs to be a very clear operation to convince them that they cannot succeed militarily, that they will not take Madrid, that they won't take Al Jauf or Shebwa or Laj, and therefore that they can only achieve their objectives through a political process. I mean, that may be the point that's been lost over these past 6 months that needs to be reestablished. The other issue, and frankly, we haven't really talked about external pressure. I mean, Russia talked about the possible positive effects of international pressure on the Houthis, the naming and shaming aspect that would convince them to change their position. But the other aspect that we haven't talked about terribly much is Iran, and what kind of influence Iran is having on the Houthi position. While I have always resisted the idea that the Houthis are a proxy of Iran, or that the Houthis will do as they are being ordered by Tehran, there's no question that the government of Iran has influence with the Houthis. And there are certainly suspicions that the Houthi hardline position on negotiations in Yemen is a reflection of the Iranian desire to use the Yemen conflict as a way of increasing pressure on the United States to be forthcoming on lifting sanctions on Iran related to the nuclear files. So that's also an issue that can't be ignored.
Thank you all. Yeah, I was going to, I had other questions about like regional influence. I was going to ask you, Ambassador, like just to continue on that point, that if nuclear negotiations move forward with Iran and yield an agreement, and could this impact Yemen peace negotiations positively or negatively, in a nutshell?
Well, I think again, if you believe that there is a relationship between the negotiations in Vienna about the Iran nuclear file and the negotiations with Yemen, if you believe that there is that relationship, then yes, a successful outcome on the nuclear negotiations, a return to the JCPOA, a reduction in the sanctions on Iran, could in fact encourage the Iranians to help improve the negotiating environment in Yemen. So that's a possibility. Now, I mean, frankly, it had always seemed to me that the Iranian interest should be the other way, that they should demonstrate that they can be a constructive element in regional issues by helping to resolve the Yemen conflict. But I'm afraid that my views don't hold much water in Tehran.
Thank you, Ambassador. I appreciate it. Just when we are talking about regional and actors, I want to go back to Mr. Rafat Al-Akhali, and this question focuses a little bit on the economic drivers of the humanitarian crisis. Is the Saudi-led coalition's blockade of Yemen the primary driver of the crisis, or is the de facto government equally responsible for this?
I think the use of the term blockade is much debated, and whether there is a blockade or not, but that's a different conversation. What we know for sure is specifically for fuel shipments, and I think that is where the key issue has been for the last at least 2 years or so. The issue of allowing fuel shipments to come in through Hodeidah port. I think this is where the major escalation has taken place. And until today, it is still suspended because of what happened in the previous agreement and debate between the government and Ansar Allah on who broke the agreement and why they broke the agreement. So that is a clear process there. But I think the key issue is it cannot be pointed down to one party or the other, or one procedure or action taken on one side or the other. When you look at what is happening in Yemen, everything has contributed to the increase in prices, starting from the shipping costs and insurance costs for anything to come to any port in Yemen. And then the additional processes for clearance of these goods, given the UNVIM process that is now in place, the Security Council resolutions that are in place, all that has contributed to an increase in price even before the goods arrive. But then to move the goods anywhere, as Ambassador Khalid has just mentioned, if you move a few kilometers, you start another checkpoint, and they want their own levies. And as you cross between government-controlled areas and Ansar Allah controlled areas, you are double taxed, you pay double customs, and then there's all these shortages, and there is a collapse in the currency. So all these factors are coming together. And again, some of these can be addressed if there was a real process to sit and talk about some of these issues and how to bring the cost down. But unfortunately, that process is not in place. The parties are not actually sitting to discuss any of this. One clear example has been the fuel shipment process that was put in place. And the final point in that agreement was that the parties will meet and agree on how that customs money will be spent. How will it be used to pay the salaries? That was the last point in the agreement. Months and months passed by. There was no meeting done. There was no progress in reaching agreement on that point, because again, as I mentioned, the process is not there, the attention is not there, the leadership is not there. And so eventually that whole agreement broke apart. So I think, again, the key issue to me at least is this lack of a process, lack of leadership that can guide the parties towards it. Left to their own, they will not reach any agreement, they will not reach any, they will not give up any concessions. But if there was an honest broker and a mediator working actively on this, we might see some positive results.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up, Mr. Al-Akhali, we are days away from, we're a week away from UNGA meetings in New York. And despite the deepening crisis, and you just gave us depicted what's going on the ground, but we know, and Ambassador Al-Yemeni mentioned the donor fatigue and the frustration in the international community, which are leading to lessening contributions to the humanitarian effort. In a nutshell, quickly, what can be done to refresh the international community's resolve to support the humanitarian stakeholders in Yemen conflict?
I think, the big challenge with the donor fatigue side, I believe, is because of the lack of any light at the end of the tunnel. There isn't a political process in place. Nothing is happening. So it seems like an endless crisis that every year they have to put money into it, and it's almost like you put money into the bag and nothing comes out, basically. And so I think on that side, having a process in place, having a roadmap in place. And this is what we were missing before as well. It seemed like we were jumping from one attempt to another, but there wasn't really any vision or roadmap on where the process is going and how to enforce that. But I think having that at least might drive up some attention, because people will see there is a light at the end of the tunnel, as I mentioned. But more importantly, I think what we really need to address, and this is something where the international community can put more pressure on, not only on the side of this, as I mentioned, mediation process on economic issues, but also on some of the critical reforms that need to be taken on the government side. And that, there has been delay after delay in taking any of that, both, on the government side and on the Saudi-led coalition side as well. When we look at it, for example, there has been calls for reforms to the central bank, the leadership of the central bank, their expired mandate, their lack of ability to deliver so far. And there has been very clear recommendations, whether from the IMF, whether from all the, that something needs to happen there. Unfortunately, nothing has happened. We continue to see the collapse. We continue to see this lack. And this is an area where, with some pressure, and of course, we always say that, the international community has more levers of pressure on the government than Ansar Allah, which is an imbalance. But in this case, that pressure is not really being used or capitalized on, because again, the economic issue is taking a back seat. So a lot of things can be done if the government is pushed to do what they are supposed to do. There are also other areas. I mean, one of the major reasons for the collapse of currency is the lack of foreign currency reserves for Yemen. One of the major sources for foreign currency in Yemen was the natural gas LNG exports, liquefied natural gas exports. Now, that export facility has been, not operational since the beginning of the war. If you follow the news, there has been a big escalation the past few weeks, because in Shabwa, the governor and others are pushing for the Emirates to leave that Balhaf LNG facility and to resume the production. Now, again, if I was in the position of the government, if I know that this used to, the export of LNG used to get in about $1 to $2 billion US, all the small things that I've been trying to do as government will never get me that. But resolving this issue, and I'm not saying it's only an issue of the Emirati base there's multiple issues to regain and reoperate that facility. But if they only focused on that and got that operational again, huge relief and perhaps, much more than what any donor aid can do. So I think it's these priorities that need to be addressed. Can there be enough attention from the international side on this file to push it forward is the question.
Thank you very much. I see, Rasha, your hand is raised. What is your opinion on this? And just before that, I just want to remind our participants that we will open the Q&A session in few minutes. If you have any questions, you can share them on our social media platform, Facebook and Twitter, or here in the Zoom chat, and we will ask our distinguished panel those questions. Thank you very much. Over to you, Rasha.
Thank you, Hassam. Well, for Yemen, the humanitarian crisis pre-existed even before the war. It got worsened with the war dynamics and magnified, but we've been hearing about the humanitarian crisis for me, at least since 2009. So knowing that the humanitarian crisis is protracted, the response since then has failed to address this dimension of the crisis, that it is protracted, it is long-term, and that we need long-term solutions. The money that was spent on the humanitarian response in former years, it reached I think in 2009, its highest, like $4 billion. This money should have been spent on things that will bring to Yemeni sustainable solutions, and electricity and water and livelihood income generation activities. But unfortunately, the focus has been always food. We don't want, teach a person to fish rather than give them fish. So unfortunately, the humanitarian response has not been, in terms of its design, even inclusive and listening to women. We've done a lot of consultations with women, and their priority always has been livelihood and income generation activities, health services, education for their kids. The money is not spent as much as on these areas comparing to the food items. The other thing is that there is humanitarian diversion. We heard from the woman that the food that is supposed to be humanitarian aid is sold in black markets, is sold in normal shelves. Sometimes it is found even in the front lines with armed groups. So there is, additionally, there is no access to the fund for NGOs. It's not no access, but it's very difficult to access the funding, the UN funding on humanitarian for the local NGOs, and specifically for women-led organizations, because there are criteria that are difficult. You have to have $250,000 as an annual budget as an organization. You have to be 2 years unregistered, stuff like these that are very difficult for women-led organizations, who some of them actually changed their mandate since the war started and became humanitarian organizations, but they rely largely on donors who are from the private sector or Yemeni people in the diaspora, and not able to access the humanitarian funding. The other thing that actually Rafat mentioned, which is the foreign currency flow into the central bank, the humanitarian funding does not go through the central bank. This is something that we're trying to change. It needs to be channeled through the central bank, because it will support stabilizing the currency.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll go to Ambassador Khaled Al-Yemeni. In the wake of talking about negotiations and international communities, you have said in the past that there is no magic solution to end the conflict in Yemen. But there is a growing consensus that the current negotiation structure does not really reflect the key stakeholders needed at the table to end the war. What should the delegations of the internationally recognized government and the de facto government look like to capture real power dynamics on the ground and be truly representative to have an inclusive solution?
As I mentioned, it's really the way we design the negotiation and who will be sitting around this negotiation table. And I was in discussion quite long time with our partners on the way of addressing. I think that the representation around the table is not reflecting what's happening on the ground, and not representing and reflecting 7 years of war and what's going on the ground in the reality. And I think that one of these attempts was the Riyadh agreement. Riyadh was trying to address this issue of bringing the government with all the other factions, but it so far it's failed in resolving the problem. That's why we don't see the government on the ground. And but I think that I mean, broadening the government base is very important for the government to be representative on the table of negotiation. And as Rafat mentioned, and as I mentioned that for so many times, the Houthis are a solid unity, a solid de facto control. Meanwhile, the fragmentation is happening in the side of the government. And the government is now, is it one government, is 10 governments? This is the issue. So that's why the attempt of the international community, and this is one of these issues that we were trying to address during my time in office, is how to work with the government of Yemen. And Rafat mentioned that the international community has a responsibility to work with the government, to engage the government. During the time of Ambassador Matthew Tuller and Ambassador Feinstein, they were working with the government of Yemen, trying to strengthen the position of the government of Yemen, because weakening that position is weakening the outcome of the negotiation at the end, and losing everything. But leaving the government And even in the resources, when we're talking, this is a government that were able to pay salaries in Yemen. All the resources of the state now, if you ask what's happening to them, you see them somewhere in the regional level. Everyone is trying to amaze part of that resources and not to move it to the central bank. And it's really, I mean, a difficulty that the government will manage these resources without the help of the international community. I mean, not to turn Yemen into a begging nation, only opening our mouths and begging others to help us manage tomorrow's affairs on how to put a piece of bread on the table. I think Yemen, the government of Yemen and all the components of the government of Yemen, they should work together and not as a fiefdoms, as small entities, come together again and create this new front to manage the discussion with the Houthis, because otherwise there is no point for the Houthis to give up what they are doing, because they feel victorious and no one will stop them from achieving what they are doing, because you are losing your grassroots, you are losing your foundation, and this is critical, really.
Yeah, Ambassador Yemeni, like we talked a lot about initiative and negotiations, and it's in the wake on this. Like we recently, there's the Omani initiative, and before that it was more peace negotiations initiative. Do have these diplomatic mediation initiatives play a helpful role? Did they play a helpful role, or can they influence constructive participation by the Houthis and the local and the internationally recognized government in peace talks?
You know, as Jerry just mentioned, it was the diplomatic surge of the Biden administration that it was maybe just we were expecting a lot from that political decision. But at the end, after a few months, maybe 5 months, we realized that it's not that easy. It's not that easy, because we proved to the world day by day that there is a huge connection between what the Houthis are doing in Yemen and what they do as a proxies of Iran. So this is very important, because they've been used. They are all linked to the regional discussion, the Iranian-Saudi discussion. There is a lot of discussion, going on. There is the Vienna platform and other platforms. But I'm still thinking, and I was telling everybody from the beginning, and I wrote that in the Atlantic Council pieces I did at the beginning, that the settlement and the resolution of this conflict is among the 5 permanent representatives, the P5 in New York, because although they speak in a language that seems that they are supporting the peace process in Yemen, but the Russians, they have their own agenda. The Chinese, they have their own agenda. And look what happened to the Chinese when they jumped to Iran to just exploit the situation by getting more profits out of these international disputes. I think that we need to bring the P5 together, and we need the UN, the US leadership to be reflected in the P5, and how to accommodate each one and try to get some settlement to the crisis in Yemen. It's very important, and I think this is the only way of addressing now. And I think this is one of the challenges of the Swedish diplomat, and I don't know how far they can go, but the overall design of the settlement it's much easier. We know it. We know we need to stop this war, and we need to work together on the table of negotiation to shape the new Yemen that we all can live and work together in it. Other than that, all details. I don't want the new special envoy to spend huge time on reinventing the wheel. We know really, we have really a plan for now 7 years. We have this plan. It's not new. It's from day one up till the Stockholm Agreement and the Joint Declaration. We know what we need, but can we take the necessary steps toward it? This is the challenge.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think our time is it's 2 o'clock, it's 2:01, but I think we still have our participant, the number did not go down. If after your permission, if we can add like 10 more minutes, we have a question, we can take a question from the our participant and for closing remarks from our panelists, if that's okay. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I have this question from Saleh Lahis to Ambassador Firestein. He says, Ambassador Firestein, the USA want the war in Yemen to continue because USA gets money from the Saudis from its weapon deals. And some reports say that the USA give Houthis weapons and allow weapons from Iran to Houthis. I'm not sure how accurate is this, but this was the question of Saleh. I don't know if you want to answer it, Ambassador.
Yeah, it's very easy. First of all, the U.S. does not want the war in Yemen to continue. It has absolutely nothing to do with the U.S.-Saudi defense relationship, which goes back to the early 1950s and continues regardless of whether there's a conflict in Yemen or not. And of course, as I think everybody knows, the U.S. has done everything it can to prevent the supply of weapons to the Houthis from Iran or elsewhere. Going all the way back, even when I was in Sana'a, we were actively, the U.S. Navy was working very actively with other coalition partners in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden to try to prevent resupply of the Houthis with weapons. That continues to be our policy. So I hope that answers the question.
A build up on that is just like this brings to my mind that under the Biden administration, the U.S. kind of stopped the sale of weapons of offensive operations to Saudi Arabia. In your opinion, Ambassador, in a couple of minutes, how much influence does the U.S. have today over Saudi Arabia's conduct of the war in Yemen?
Well, I think, you know, it's, Hussam, it's a good question. Look, the U.S. Has taken a position that that we believe, the Biden administration believes, that in order to improve the possibility of a negotiated settlement, it would be helpful for Saudi Arabia to end offensive military operations in Yemen. And I think that that's still the U.S. view, but what we've seen, again, you know, going back to the conversation we've had all along, is that the Houthis have not responded positively to that initiative, and in fact have increased their operations inside of Yemen, particularly in Marib, but also have increased cross-border attacks into Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. Has been very clear in saying that not only do we support the right of Saudi Arabia to defend itself, but also that it's our policy to help them achieve that. And then, you know, and also we should take note of the fact that right after the Biden administration made its announcement about its policy, Saudi Arabia followed along and made its own statement supporting a ceasefire in Yemen, as well as an end to the cross-border attacks. And again, the Houthis have not responded. So I would say that that at this moment there is not a difference of view between Washington and Riyadh about how to end this conflict. The issue is with the Houthis, not with the U.S. or Saudi Arabia.
Thank you. There is another question from Ammar Abdullah, and he said, he didn't say to who. The question is why the international community don't put some pressure towards prioritizing economy in the peace talks. Any of our panelists want to tackle this?
It's a question for Rafat.
Rafat?
Sure. No, I think multiple factors. I think what's very interesting is comparing Libya with Yemen. And I think you see a lot of the differences there, starting from the, I guess, personality on one side, but also the interpretation on the other side of the UN Special Envoy. For example, in Libya, it was the other way around, where when Ghassan Salameh took office there, he really understood that he needed to address the economic issues and the war economy in order to reach the political settlement. So he pushed hard to take leadership and ownership of the economic track between the parties and to do something about that. However, he was not fully allowed, I would say, from my own analysis and being close to the situation there in Libya as well, because I guess Libya has a lot of money flowing around, and like Yemen is mostly a liability. So in Libya, for example, the international community wanted to lead that. Specifically, the US took the leadership on the economic track. They had the Libya Economic Forum, and they continued to not necessarily give the space for the UN to lead on that. It took a lot of time, it took a lot of steps for the Special Envoy's office there to first build the capacity and push for it to take control of that, until eventually when the Berlin process happened, they took full ownership, I would say, of the economic track, and there was clearly an economic track. In Yemen, it's the other way around. The US, the UK, and others have been actively pushing the Special Envoy and his office that they should take ownership and leadership of the economic track. While, as I mentioned, for reasons related to interpretation of mandate, the UN envoy has not been willing to take that. And so it kept oscillating in this weird space where nobody is really leading it. There isn't really a clear process and agenda for it. And until today, it continues to be the way. I think in a lot of ways, people are preoccupied, and perhaps rightly so, with stopping the war, ending the conflict, and then these things will eventually resolve once there is at least an end to the war. But at the same time, as I mentioned, it has become the major front for the war, and it has become the major suffering for the people of Yemen. And so if it's not addressed, we will continue to be in this cycle.
Thank you very much, Rafat. We will have one last question. We'll take it from Huriya Mashhour. She says, why there is no, why the United States did not appoint an ambassador to Yemen, where there's that void? Is it because that Yemen doesn't have an ambassador in the United States? Ambassador Jerry Weinstein?
Well, it goes to the process of appointing ambassadors and confirming ambassadors, and I would say that up until now, the process of naming new ambassadors has been very slow here, and it's not about Yemen. We don't have ambassadors in many of our biggest and most significant accounts. In the region, we don't have an ambassador in Saudi Arabia. We don't have an ambassador in UAE, in Doha. We have nominated an ambassador for Israel, but that person is not confirmed yet. And so I think that, given the circumstance, it's not surprising that they haven't nominated a new ambassador for Yemen, although I know that the personnel process was moving, and that they were in fact trying to identify an individual who could take that position. So it's got more to do with the way we go about naming ambassadors than it does to do with anything related to Yemen.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Thank you for that. And I think now I just have one last as a closing question to everybody. And our esteemed panel, guys, you can give your closing remarks. My question is, if you could give the special envoy, Hans Grunberg, a piece of advice for moving forward through the current impasse, what would that be? And I know Russia has its own reservation because she wanted a woman as a special envoy, and or at least if it's a man, to be from the region. So I'm looking forward to hear your input, your answer on this question. Up to you. We'll start with you, Russia.
Thank you, Hassan. Yes, we wanted and this is actually a message also for the US, since they are now going to choose an ambassador. I know the acting ambassador is a woman, so just make it official and let her continue her mandate. For the UN, yes, we wanted a woman to lead the process. We saw how Libya, when they had the acting UN envoy as a woman, she was able to make the Libyan parties reach an agreement. So I'm always optimistic when it comes to women. Now, for the new UN envoy, what I'm hoping is that he will, as I said, design a meaningful way of inclusion, and he will listen to the women. As Yemeni women, we have been so organized. The women's movement has been organized, has been established. We have created our own feminist peace roadmap that is going to guide the process. He has all the tools that he needs to start in a successful track. He just needs to rely on us and take the advice of Yemenis inside Yemen and in the diaspora, and hopefully it will move. But more importantly, it needs to be a multi-party process. It's not only the responsibility of the UN. We are glad that the US have dedicated a US envoy, and this is something actually we called for. This shows that it's going to be high in their agenda, and we need specifically the countries who are in the UN Security Council to have more focus on Yemen. So thanks.
Thank you very much, Russia. Rafat?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, when I was in Yemen just over the past month, I met with private sector, I met with all the chambers of commerce, I met with the Banking Association, Money Exchange Association, the officials handling the economic file in Aden and in Sana'a, and all across, and I met with hundreds of youth in different town halls. What was unanimous is this thing that the priority should be to the economy. Everyone was complaining, everyone was reeling and under a very painful situation from the skyrocketing prices, from the ridiculous transfer fees, workers who are working in Marib or in Shabwa and their families are in Sana'a or in Eb or in any of the other areas. If they transfer 100,000 riyals, their families only get 30,000 and 70,000 goes to transfer fees. Just ridiculous. Cannot sustain this situation for much longer. You see the suffering everywhere, as I said, on this file. So I think the one thing that I would definitely emphasize for the new envoy is he needs to lead this process. I think if he decides to, again, leave it to later, focus on the political and the military first, I think everything should go in parallel. And if not enough attention is paid to that, there will be great consequences to the Yemeni people, most importantly.
Thank you very much, Rafat. Ambassador Firestein.
Thanks, Hussam. I would say, I take Rafat's point seriously. My own view is that the number one priority has to be getting a ceasefire in place. That nothing will happen until you stop the shooting. And then I agree completely that the economy has to be number two. I agree completely with the point that the heart of the humanitarian crisis in Yemen is actually an economic crisis, and that it has to be a priority to get people back to work, to begin to get the economy moving again. But I don't think that that's going to happen before before you stop the shooting. So I would put those two things not quite in parallel, but consecutive. The other point that I would make is, again, I agree with Russia that we need to expand participation in the dialogue process. You can go all the way back to 2015 to our old friend Jamal bin Omar and the negotiation of the Peace and National Partnership Agreement in September. We're almost exactly at the 7-year anniversary of the first effort to resolve differences between the Houthis and the government. You can go all the way back to that point. And since then, the negotiation has always been between the two parties. It's always been between the government and the Houthis. It has not succeeded. I think that the time has come to really try to bring in other participants in the hope that perhaps some fresh thinking, some new experiences can help move the process forward.
Thank you, Ambassador Firestein. To you, Ambassador Khalid Al-Yemeni, and just as a reminder, the question was if you could give the Special Envoy Hans Grunberg a piece of advice for moving forward through the current impasse, what would that be? And feel free also to give us your closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Hussam. Yemenis are living in nightmare for the last 7 years, or maybe for the last 10 years. It's a real nightmare. I mean, you can't live only one night, with this feeling of fear. But Yemenis in Yemen, they are living this nightmare for 7 or 10 years, and all attempts to just, lessen that impact on the population is doing nothing but bringing them deeper into a situation that we will have famine, and we are talking about 21 million in need of humanitarian assistance and protection, and there will be, we will see pockets of famine, people dying, not because of the war, not because of the issue of this struggle for power and struggle for who will be controlling our tomorrow. And no, that's why I think we should stop this war. But if we can't stop this war, are we going to leave Yemenis continue the suffering without looking for ways into looking how to accommodate all the parties to the conflict on issues that we can agree? It's in their benefit. It's their population that we need to as Rafat mentioned, we need to get close into some consensus on issues of the currency, some issues of the delivery of humanitarian assistance, some issues of no one will be paying to you humanitarian assistance forever if you don't look for ways to survive with all your minimum resources. My advice to the Special Envoy: please don't spend too much time on looking into the issue from the freshest perspective. Yemen, the settlement of the issue is on the table. We have proposals, and we have been discussing this for the last 10 years. If you can take it and continue running in the process of getting the parties to agree on stopping the war, and everything can be done. Everything can be done if we stop the war and think in our country and think how to recover this country and how to recover our sovereignty. This is very important.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you, Ambassador Khalid Al-Yemeni, the former Yemeni Foreign Minister, also Ambassador Gerald Firestein, the former US Ambassador to Yemen, and Ms. Rasha Jarhoum, the co-founder and director of the Peace Track Initiative. and Mr. Rafat Ali Al-Akhali, the fellow at the Blavantic School of Government in University of Oxford and former Minister of Youth and Sports. Thank you, all of you, for taking the time and to share your knowledge with us. And thank you again to our participants. We had a steady number of participants. It didn't fall out, even though we're 20 minutes over time. Thank you all again. And we want to thank the Al Saeed Foundation for giving us the platform and helping and organizing this discussion. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Have a good day.
Bye-bye.